Marcus's boots pounded against the strange, glowing ground as he chased after Lyra. The hum in the air grew louder, vibrating through his bones. The trees around them seemed to move, their glowing branches swaying unnaturally. He couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching them. Lyra moved quickly, her silver hair flowing behind her like a comet's tail. Despite the unease gnawing at his chest, Marcus was impressed by her agility. She didn't look back to check if he was following, as though she knew he had no choice. "What's going on?" Marcus called out, dodging a low-hanging branch that seemed to reach for him. "What's causing that sound?" Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her glowing purple eyes full of urgency. "The core is destabilizing. We have little time." The core. Marcus frowned, his grip tightening on the scanner. He was trained to deal with strange phenomena, but nothing in his experience prepared him for this. "You need to explain what's happening, Lyra. I don't even know what you mean by chosen." She didn't answer right away, leading him deeper into the forest. The hum became a deafening roar, and Marcus struggled to keep his balance as the ground shook beneath him. Just as he was about to demand answers again, Lyra stopped abruptly. They stood at the edge of a large clearing. At its center was a massive structure that looked ancient yet alive. It pulsed with a strange, golden light, its surface covered in intricate, glowing patterns that shifted like they were breathing. "This is the heart of Clyra," Lyra said, her voice barely audible over the roaring sound. "It is what sustains my world, my people, but it is failing." Marcus stared at the structure, his mind racing. It looked like a mix of natural and mechanical elements, unlike anything he'd ever seen. He activated his scanner, but the readings made no sense. The energy levels were off the charts, fluctuating wildly. "What does this have to do with me?" he asked, his voice hard. Lyra turned to face him, her expression solemn. "The heart needs to be stabilized, or everything will collapse. The energy within it is too powerful for any of my kind to withstand. But you, your physiology, your energy field, you are compatible. You can save it." Marcus's stomach sank. "You're telling me I need to touch that thing?" Lyra nodded. "Not just touch, you must become a conduit. Your presence will harmonize the heart's energy, but it will not be easy." "Easy?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "This sounds suicidal." "I understand your fear," Lyra said, stepping closer. "But you are our only hope. If the heart fails, my people will perish, and this planet will die." Marcus looked into her glowing eyes, seeing the weight of her desperation. He wanted to walk away, to leave this strange world and its problems behind. But something about Lyra's plea stirred something deep inside him, a sense of responsibility, even if he didn't fully understand why. Before he could respond, the ground beneath them cracked, and the golden light from the heart flared brighter, blinding him. "Decide quickly, Marcus," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "The heart won't wait much longer." Marcus's boots pounded against the strange, glowing ground as he chased after Lyra. The hum in the air grew louder, vibrating through his bones. The trees around them seemed to move, their glowing branches swaying unnaturally. He couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching them. Lyra moved quickly, her silver hair flowing behind her like a comet's tail. Despite the unease gnawing at his chest, Marcus was impressed by her agility. She didn't look back to check if he was following, as though she knew he had no choice. "What's going on?" Marcus called out, dodging a low-hanging branch that seemed to reach for him. "What's causing that sound?" Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her glowing purple eyes full of urgency. "The core is destabilizing. We have little time." The core. Marcus frowned, his grip tightening on the scanner. He was trained to deal with strange phenomena, but nothing in his experience prepared him for this. "You need to explain what's happening, Lyra. I don't even know what you mean by chosen." She didn't answer right away, leading him deeper into the forest. The hum became a deafening roar, and Marcus struggled to keep his balance as the ground shook beneath him. Just as he was about to demand answers again, Lyra stopped abruptly. They stood at the edge of a large clearing. At its center was a massive structure that looked ancient yet alive. It pulsed with a strange golden light, its surface covered in intricate, glowing patterns that shifted like they were breathing. "This is the heart of Clyra," Lyra said, her voice barely audible over the roaring sound. "It is what sustains my world, my people, but it is failing." Marcus stared at the structure, his mind racing. It looked like a mix of natural and mechanical elements, unlike anything he'd ever seen. He activated his scanner, but the readings made no sense. The energy levels were off the charts, fluctuating wildly. "What does this have to do with me?" he asked, his voice hard. Lyra turned to face him, her expression solemn. "The heart needs to be stabilized, or everything will collapse. The energy within it is too powerful for any of my kind to withstand. But you, your physiology, your energy field, you are compatible. You can save it." Marcus's stomach sank. "You're telling me I need to touch that thing?" Lyra nodded. "Not just touch. You must become a conduit. Your presence will harmonize the heart's energy. But it will not be easy." "Easy?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "This sounds suicidal." "I understand your fear," Lyra said, stepping closer. "But you are our only hope. If the heart fails, my people will perish, and this planet will die." Marcus looked into her glowing eyes, seeing the weight of her desperation. He wanted to walk away, to leave this strange world and its problems behind. But something about Lyra's plea stirred something deep inside him. A sense of responsibility, even if he didn't fully understand why. Before he could respond, the ground beneath them cracked, and the golden light from the heart flared brighter, blinding him. "Decide quickly, Marcus," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "The heart won't wait much longer." Marcus shielded his eyes from the intense golden light erupting from the heart. The ground beneath his feet trembled violently, and the air felt charged with energy, making it hard to breathe. He could feel sweat dripping down his face, though he couldn't tell if it was from the heat or the pressure of the moment. "I'm not sure I can do this," Marcus shouted over the deafening roar of the unstable heart. "You must," Lyra replied, her voice firm yet laced with desperation. She grabbed his arm, her touch surprisingly warm despite the alien glow of her skin. "Your kind has always been resilient, resourceful. If anyone can succeed, it's you." Her words stunned Marcus. He wasn't some hero. He was just a surveyor trying to do his job. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Still, there was no denying the urgency in Lyra's eyes. Her entire world was crumbling, and somehow he was caught in the middle of it. "Fine," Marcus muttered, more to himself than to her. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. "What do I need to do?" Lyra's expression softened, a flicker of hope crossing her face. "Follow me." She led him toward the heart, the golden structure towering over them like a living entity. As they approached, the patterns on its surface shifted faster, almost as if it recognized their presence. Marcus felt a strange pull, like an invisible force drawing him closer. "The heart has a central node," Lyra explained, pointing to a glowing circular symbol near the base. "You must place your hand there. The energy will flow through you, harmonizing the imbalance." "Sounds simple enough," Marcus said sarcastically, though his stomach churned at the thought. "What happens if it doesn't work?" Lyra hesitated, her gaze dropping for a moment. "If it doesn't work, the heart will consume you." "Great," Marcus muttered. "No pressure." As he stepped closer to the node, the energy in the air grew stronger, making every hair on his body stand on end. He reached out cautiously, his hand trembling. The moment his fingers brushed the glowing surface, a jolt of energy shot through him, making him gasp. "Marcus," Lyra called out, her voice filled with concern. "I'm fine," he gritted, though his body felt like it was on fire. The energy was overwhelming, but he forced himself to keep his hand pressed against the node. The patterns on the heart began to slow, their chaotic movements gradually stabilizing. Marcus could feel the energy flowing through him, connecting him to something far greater than himself. It was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. But just as the patterns seemed to reach harmony, a dark shadow flickered across the heart. The golden light dimmed slightly, and Marcus felt a cold presence wash over him. "What was that?" he asked, his voice strained. Lyra's expression darkened. "Something is interfering. We're not alone." Before Marcus could react, a deep guttural growl echoed from the shadows behind them. Something, or someone, didn't want him to succeed. The growl sent a chill down Marcus's spine, and he instinctively pulled his hand away from the glowing node. The golden light dimmed further, and the patterns on the heart became erratic again, pulsating with a frantic energy. "What was that?" Marcus asked, turning to Lyra, his voice barely steady. Her glowing eyes narrowed as she scanned the dark edges of the clearing. "It's a guardian," she said in a low voice, her tone grim. "A creature that was created to protect the heart, but it doesn't understand that we're trying to save it." Marcus swallowed hard. He didn't like the sound of that. "You're telling me this thing is about to attack us?" As if in response, a massive shadow emerged from the forest. The creature was enormous, its body covered in shimmering scales that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Marcus, and its growl grew louder, vibrating through the ground. Lyra stepped in front of Marcus, holding out her hands in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm," she called out, her voice calm but firm. "He is the one chosen to restore balance to the heart. Let him pass." The creature tilted its head, as if it understood her words, but its growl didn't stop. Instead, it took a menacing step forward, baring sharp, jagged teeth. "I don't think it's buying it," Marcus said, gripping the scanner in his hand like a weapon, though he doubted it would do much good. Lyra glanced back at him, her face tense. "It's been centuries since anyone approached the heart. The Guardian doesn't trust easily. We must prove ourselves." "And how exactly do we do that?" Before Lyra could answer, the creature lunged. Marcus barely had time to react, diving to the side as the Guardian's massive claws slashed through the air where he had been standing. "Stay behind me," Lyra shouted, her hands glowing with a soft, blue light. She stepped forward, chanting in a language Marcus couldn't understand. The air around her shimmered, forming a protective barrier that forced the creature back. The Guardian roared, slamming against the barrier, but Lyra held her ground. Beads of sweat formed on her brow as she struggled to maintain the shield. Marcus's mind raced. He couldn't just stand there and let her do all the work. He glanced at the heart, its chaotic energy threatening to spiral out of control. If they didn't act fast, everything would be lost. "Lyra," he called out, "can you hold it off long enough for me to stabilize the heart?" Her eyes flicked to him, filled with both fear and determination. "I'll try, but you must hurry." Nodding, Marcus sprinted back to the node. The moment his hand touched the glowing surface, the energy surged through him again, even stronger this time. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the patterns as they began to slow and align once more. Behind him, the Guardian roared louder, slamming into Lyra's barrier with relentless force. She stumbled, her glow flickering. "Hurry, Marcus," she cried, her voice strained. Marcus pushed himself harder, ignoring the pain coursing through his body. The heart's light grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Just a little more. But before he could finish, a deafening crack split the air, and Lyra's barrier shattered. The Guardian roared in triumph, charging straight toward him. The Guardian was almost upon them. Marcus could feel the ground shake with each thunderous step it took, and the air felt heavier, charged with its primal fury. The protective barrier Lyra had created was gone, shattered like glass. The massive creature's glowing red eyes were locked on him, its teeth bared in a threatening snarl. "Lyra," Marcus shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Get back. I'll try to distract it." Lyra was still on her knees, breathing heavily from the effort of maintaining the barrier. Her face was pale, but her eyes never left the Guardian, her fear turning into fierce determination. "I won't let it harm you," she called, standing shakily but resolutely. She stepped between Marcus and the creature, her hands raised, the soft blue glow returning to her palms. The Guardian hesitated for a moment, its massive body looming. It seemed to be weighing its options, still unsure of what to make of the situation. "Lyra, you need to move. You're not strong enough to hold it back," Marcus said, his heart pounding in his chest. But Lyra shook her head. "I can't let it reach the heart. You have to finish what you started. The heart's energy is the key." The creature let out another deafening roar, snapping Marcus's focus back to the immediate threat. The Guardian lunged, its massive claws swinging toward them both. Lyra's barrier flared briefly, holding it off for a moment. But the creature was relentless. It roared again, pounding against the shimmering shield, trying to break through. Marcus's eyes darted around the clearing, looking for anything he could use to help. His heart raced, and his mind whirled with possible solutions. The scanner in his hand beeped, but he couldn't focus on the readings. Then something caught his eye, a large, jagged stone nearby. It was glowing with a faint blue light, much like the energy from the heart itself. He didn't have time to question it. He rushed toward it, his boots kicking up dust as he sprinted across the clearing. Lyra's shield flickered, the energy weakening as the Guardian pushed harder. The stone felt warm in his hand as Marcus grabbed it, and he immediately felt a surge of energy flow through him. It wasn't like the heart's energy, but it was powerful, almost alive. "What are you doing?" Lyra gasped from behind him, but Marcus didn't stop. He swung the stone in the air, aiming at the Guardian. The instant he released it, the stone shot toward the creature like a guided missile, glowing brighter as it traveled. The Guardian paused, its glowing red eyes locking onto the stone. It moved too slowly to avoid it. The stone struck the creature's chest with a resounding crack, sending a shockwave of energy through the air. The Guardian staggered back, disoriented. Marcus's heart raced. The creature seemed momentarily stunned, but it was far from defeated. It shook its head and roared in rage, its red eyes burning with fury. "Lyra," Marcus called, turning back to her. "We need to get this thing away from the heart. It's not just attacking us. It's trying to stop me from stabilizing the energy." Lyra nodded, determination flooding her features. "I'll do what I can. Just finish what you started, Marcus. Hurry." Marcus took a deep breath and rushed back toward the heart, pushing himself past the pain and exhaustion. The stone had given him a temporary advantage, but he knew it wouldn't last. The creature was already recovering, its glowing eyes fixed on him. As he placed his hand on the heart's glowing surface once again, the energy surged through him more violently than before. He could feel his body straining against it, but he had no choice. Lyra was depending on him. The planet's survival depended on him. He had to finish what he had started. The energy flowing through Marcus felt like a storm, wild and uncontrollable. It surged through every nerve in his body, pulling him toward the heart's core. His breath came in short, ragged gasps, and he had to fight against the overwhelming sensation of being torn apart from the inside out. But there was no stopping now. He had to finish what he started. The Guardian, now temporarily stunned by the stone, was still circling them. Its glowing red eyes were fixed on Marcus, but it didn't charge immediately. Instead, it seemed to be waiting, as if it understood that Marcus was the key to what was happening. The energy around the heart had stabilized slightly, but it wasn't enough. Marcus needed to tap into something deeper, something beyond the surface. Lyra was still standing her ground, her hands glowing with a soft blue light. She was weakened, but her resolve never wavered. Her eyes met Marcus's, and for a brief moment, he saw something there. Trust. She believed in him. "You're doing great, Marcus," Lyra called, her voice filled with hope. You just need to focus on the flow. It's all about balance. Balance. The word echoed in his mind. For all his training as a human explorer, this was nothing like anything he had experienced. It wasn't about technology or science. It was about something deeper, something that connected him to this alien world in a way he couldn't fully comprehend. The golden light from the heart pulsed again, stronger this time, as though it were reacting to his thoughts. Marcus focused on it, trying to understand its rhythm, its heartbeat. He closed his eyes for a moment, blocking out everything else. The roar of the Guardian, the tremors beneath his feet, the overwhelming energy coursing through him. He could feel it now, the energy flowing like a river. He had to become a part of it. He reached deeper, extending his consciousness into the heart, trying to align with its power. It was like trying to tune an instrument that was out of sync. Everything in his body screamed in protest as the energies collided, but Marcus fought through it. Suddenly, there was a shift. The chaotic patterns of light and energy started to slow, aligning into a steady, controlled pulse. The heart's light became brighter, but it was no longer chaotic. It was stable, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a living creature. And for the first time since arriving on this planet, Marcus felt at peace. But just as he thought he had succeeded, the Guardian let out another earth-shaking roar, snapping Marcus out of his concentration. The creature was charging again, its eyes full of fury. It seemed that even the harmony in the heart wasn't enough to stop it. "Marcus, no!" Lyra shouted, but it was too late. The Guardian was moving fast, its claws outstretched, ready to strike. Marcus didn't hesitate. With all the energy now flowing through him, he summoned everything he had left. His body ached, and his vision blurred, but he could see the path ahead. The energy from the heart flared around him, extending like a shield. The moment the Guardian reached him, the energy exploded outward, sending a shockwave through the clearing. The Guardian screamed, its body engulfed by the force of the blast. For a moment, everything was silent. When Marcus opened his eyes, the creature was no longer standing. It was lying on the ground, its red eyes now dimmed, no longer a threat. But the battle wasn't over. The heart still pulsed with power, and Marcus knew they weren't out of danger yet. He staggered back, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. "We have to finish this, Lyra," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "It's not over yet." Marcus barely had time to catch his breath. The energy from the heart still thrummed beneath his skin, burning through him like wildfire. His legs felt weak, and his vision swam, but he didn't dare stop. The heart was still unstable, and they hadn't defeated the threat yet. Lyra rushed to his side, her glowing eyes filled with concern. She helped him steady himself, her grip surprisingly strong despite her own exhaustion. "Marcus, are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. "I've been better," he replied, trying to force a smile, but the strain in his voice betrayed him. He could feel the weight of what he had done. The blast that sent the Guardian reeling had drained him almost to the point of collapse. But there was no time for weakness now. The Guardian was down, but it wasn't completely defeated. Lyra's eyes flicked to the fallen creature, which still stirred slightly. Its movements were slower, but it was far from dead. The heart's energy had pushed it back, but it wasn't enough to eliminate the creature. "I need to finish stabilizing the heart," Marcus said, his voice more determined now. "This thing is just a symptom of the bigger problem. We have to stop the core from collapsing." Lyra nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "I understand, but we need to be quick. If we don't act now, the heart will implode and the whole planet will follow." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus glanced at the heart, still glowing but flickering with instability. The patterns of light had slowed, but they were uneven, pulsing erratically like a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. It needed more than just his connection. It needed a solution, a human solution. Marcus took a deep breath, pushing through the pain in his chest. His mind raced. The heart wasn't just a power source. It was a living entity, connected to the very fabric of the planet. If he could synchronize his energy with it once again, he might be able to stabilize it for good. But it would mean tapping into something deeper, something he wasn't sure he could control. "You've been so strong," Lyra said softly, sensing his hesitation. "But you don't have to do this alone. Let me help." Marcus looked at her. There was something in her eyes that gave him the courage he needed. She had risked everything to bring him here. And now, they were both in this together. He didn't have to shoulder the weight alone. "I don't know if I can do this," Marcus admitted, his voice quiet, almost fearful. "But if I don't know what will happen to this planet, or to you." Lyra placed her hand on his arm, her touch gentle but reassuring. "You are the one who was chosen, Marcus. This is your moment." With her words, a strange calmness washed over him. The doubt that had clouded his mind faded, replaced by a sense of purpose. The heart wasn't just a machine. It was a living thing, and he was the bridge between it and the future. He turned back to the heart, focusing on the energy that coursed through it. The pulsing light seemed to respond to his thoughts, pulling him deeper into its rhythm. He reached out again, placing his hand firmly on the heart's surface. This time, there was no hesitation. As his hand made contact, the energy surged once more, but this time, it was different. The power flowing through him felt harmonious, like a symphony playing in perfect tune. He wasn't just trying to stabilize it anymore. He was syncing with it. The heart's light grew brighter, then steadied, its chaotic movements slowly becoming calm and even. Marcus held his breath as the patterns finally aligned, the energy settling into a steady pulse. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes wide with awe as the heart's glow stabilized. "You did it, Marcus," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. But Marcus didn't respond. His vision blurred, and his legs buckled beneath him. The energy had taken everything he had. He could barely stand, let alone move. "Marcus," Lyra called, her voice filled with panic. She rushed to catch him, holding him steady. I'm fine," he murmured weakly, fighting to stay conscious. The mission was over, and they had won, but he wasn't sure he could keep going. Lyra helped him sit, her hands still glowing as she hovered over him protectively. "You saved us all," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, letting the world around him fade. He had done it. He had saved her people. But now, all he wanted was to rest. "We still have to go," he said faintly, his words slurred. "We got to leave before the Guardian wakes up." But as he spoke, the Guardian, lying motionless on the ground, stirred again, slowly rising to its feet. The fight wasn't over just yet. The Guardian was back on its feet. It moved slowly, but its massive form loomed menacingly over Marcus and Lyra. The red glow in its eyes had returned, fiercer than before. Despite the heart being stabilized, the creature seemed more determined to stop them than ever. Lyra's grip on Marcus tightened as she steadied him. His body felt like dead weight, drained from the energy surge that had stabilized the heart. He couldn't afford to let his guard down now, not when everything was hanging in the balance. "We need to move," Lyra said urgently, her voice trembling with fear. "It's not fully subdued. We can't stay here." Marcus nodded weakly, trying to push himself to his feet, but his legs were unsteady. His head was spinning. The intense burst of energy he had absorbed from the heart had left him vulnerable, and he could barely stand on his own. The Guardian growled again, its heavy steps causing the ground to shake. It wasn't just a mindless protector, it was angry, and it had only one thing on its mind: keeping them away from the heart. Marcus tried to focus, summoning every bit of strength he had left. "We can't outrun it, Lyra. We need a plan." Lyra glanced around the clearing, her eyes scanning the surroundings for anything they could use. "There's no time for a plan. We have to keep it from reaching the heart. If it gets too close, it'll destabilize everything." Marcus could see the panic in her eyes, But he couldn't afford to lose focus. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the dizziness, and finally stood up. His legs felt shaky, but he had to keep going. He had to do something. What if we use the heart's energy? Marcus suggested, still struggling to keep his balance. Maybe we can push it back one more time. Lyra's eyes widened. You want to use the heart again? After everything you've just done? We don't have a choice, Marcus said. The guardian was drawing closer, its claws scraping against the ground as it stalked them. The air grew colder, and the sound of its heavy breathing filled the clearing. We can't let it reach the heart. Lyra hesitated, but then her expression hardened. She knew he was right. They had to act fast. All right, she said, her voice resolute. We'll try one last push, but this time, we do it together. Marcus nodded. He felt the pulse of energy still lingering within him from the heart, though it was faint. Lyra raised her hands, her glowing blue energy flowing outwards, and together they reached for the heart. The guardian, now mere feet away, lunged forward, its claws aimed directly at Marcus. But just as it struck, the heart erupted with energy again, the golden light flaring up like a sun. Marcus and Lyra both channeled what little energy they had left into the heart, directing it toward the guardian. A wave of force surged through the clearing, sending the guardian tumbling backwards. It screamed in pain and fury as it was thrown away, crashing into the far side of the clearing. The force of the blast was enough to knock it unconscious, its body twitching, but no longer a threat. Marcus collapsed to his knees, completely drained. He barely had the strength to keep his eyes open, but the weight of what they had done hit him all at once. They had won. Lyra knelt beside him, her hands still glowing faintly as she helped him stay upright. You did it, she whispered, her voice filled with awe and gratitude. We're safe. Marcus, barely conscious, managed a weak smile. We're safe, for now. As the clearing began to settle, the golden light of the heart softened, returning to its steady pulse. The planet's energy had balanced itself again, its power no longer chaotic or dangerous. But even as the immediate threat was over, Marcus knew that their journey wasn't finished. They had saved the heart and its people, but the world around them was still uncertain. What would happen now? What would the future hold for this alien planet? And for him? We'll figure it out, Lyra said softly, sensing his thoughts. Together. Marcus nodded, exhaustion finally taking over as he let himself relax for the first time since they had arrived. He didn't know what came next, but one thing was certain. Whatever the future held, he wasn't facing it alone. Marcus woke to the sound of soft wind rustling through the trees. His eyelids fluttered open, and for a moment, he wasn't sure where he was. The pain in his body was gone, replaced by a deep sense of weariness that made every muscle feel like lead. But as his eyes adjusted to the light, he remembered. The heart, the guardian, Lyra, they had won. Lyra was sitting next to him, her head tilted up toward the sky, watching the early morning light filter through the leaves above. The clearing was peaceful now, the chaos of the previous battle slowly fading into memory. Marcus could still feel the lingering hum of the planet's energy, but it was calm now, stable. The heart had been saved. How long was I out? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse but stronger than before. Lyra turned her head, her glowing eyes soft with concern. A few hours. You needed rest. You've been through a lot. He tried to sit up, wincing slightly as the muscles in his back protested. Lyra was quick to help him, offering her hand, which he accepted gratefully. There was something comforting about her presence now, something that made him feel like he wasn't alone in this strange world. Where's the guardian? Marcus asked, looking around. He didn't see the massive creature anywhere. It's gone, Lyra said quietly. We drove it away, but I think it's learned its lesson. It won't attack again. Marcus nodded, though a part of him still wondered if they had truly seen the last of it. But there was no time to dwell on it. They had bigger concerns now. The heart had been saved, but what did that mean for the future of Lyra's people? So, what happens now? Marcus asked, his eyes meeting hers. Is the planet going to be okay? Lyra's expression grew thoughtful. Yes. For the first time in centuries, the heart is stable again. My people have a chance, but it's more than just fixing the heart. It's about rebuilding. We've been scattered, isolated. There's a lot of work ahead. Marcus took a deep breath. He had come to this planet to do a simple survey, to measure its potential for colonization, and yet he had become a part of something much bigger. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He had helped save an entire world. If you need help, I'll stay, Marcus said, surprising himself. The words were out before he had a chance to second-guess them. He wasn't sure how much help he could be, but after everything that had happened, it felt right. Lyra smiled softly, a small but genuine smile that made her glow even more. Thank you, but I don't want you to feel trapped here. You've already given so much. Marcus looked at her, his mind racing. He had come to this planet with one mission, but now everything had changed. He had helped save a world, and in doing so, he had formed a connection with Lyra, a bond that went beyond their differences. I don't feel trapped, Marcus said quietly. I feel needed, and I think that's more important than anything. Lyra didn't respond right away. Instead, she stood and offered him her hand, her expression serious, but filled with hope. Come with me, Marcus. There's much to do, and we can start together. Marcus took her hand, his heart filled with a strange sense of peace. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since landing on this strange planet, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Together, they walked toward the horizon, where the first light of a new day bathed the planet in warmth. The journey was far from over, but for Marcus, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. And as they moved forward, the heart of Clara pulsed softly behind them, a symbol of hope, stability, and the promise of a future rebuilt. You said. Days had passed since Marcus and Lyra had stabilized the heart of Clara, but the work wasn't over. The people of her world were still scattered, their once great civilization now fractured and broken. It would take time to rebuild, and Marcus had become an unexpected part of that journey. He stood now on the edge of the clearing, looking out over the vast landscape that had been saved. The skies were clear, the air fresh with the promise of a new beginning. The planet, once on the brink of collapse, was thriving again, but it was still fragile. They had managed to stop the immediate danger, but the long-term survival of Clara depended on careful restoration. Behind him, Lyra approached quietly. Her presence was calming, like the steady pulse of the heart itself. She had been working tirelessly, helping her people recover, and Marcus admired her strength. You've been out here for hours, Lyra said, her voice soft, but carrying the weight of the days they'd spent working together. Are you all right? Marcus turned to her, offering a tired but genuine smile. Just thinking about how far we've come. It feels like we've done so much, but there's still so much left to do. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. I know, but we can't rush this. My people need time to heal, to rebuild their homes, their lives. They stood together in silence for a moment, the wind rustling through the trees. It was peaceful now, but Marcus knew the work ahead would be anything but easy. He wasn't sure what his role would be in the long term. He was a human in a world so different from his own, with skills that could help but were still limited. I've been thinking, Marcus began, his voice thoughtful, about staying here. Not just for a few weeks or months, but for good. If you'll have me, I want to help rebuild this place, help your people. Lyra turned to him, surprised but not entirely shocked. You don't have to stay, Marcus. You've already done so much. This is your world, your life. I know, he said, shaking his head. But this place, it feels like home. You've shown me a side of the universe I never knew existed. And I feel like I'm part of something now. Something important. Lyra studied him for a long moment, her glowing eyes searching his face. There was a vulnerability in her gaze, but also a warmth, a recognition of what they had shared. "I'm glad you're here," she said finally, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "My people will need someone like you. And I think we can build a future here, together." Marcus's heart swelled at her words. It wasn't just about saving the heart. It wasn't just about fixing things temporarily. They had a chance to create something lasting, something stronger than before. They had the opportunity to heal not only the planet but themselves as well. Together, they could do it. The two of them walked back to the village, where others had already begun their work. There was a sense of unity now, of purpose that hadn't existed before. People were rebuilding their homes, tending to the land, and coming together in a way that Marcus had never expected. He had once thought he was just an outsider here, someone passing through, but now he saw that he was part of something much bigger. This wasn't just Lyra's fight, it was theirs. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the planet in a warm golden light, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. The future of Clara was uncertain, but it was no longer a lost cause. It was a world reborn, and with it, the hope of a new beginning. Side by side with Lyra, Marcus was ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would build a future, for themselves, for the people of Clara, and for the planet that had given them both a second chance.